The destination of Moss's magic-induced transfer was at the very edge of Velzard's authority. Even Moss, a powerful demon, was unable to teleport into the snow and ice, where even visual perception was impossible. However, that was all according to plan. Beyond this point, you must be prepared to face death. Are you really going? If you're going to turn back, now's the time. Moss asked Souka in secret. To Moss and the others, their supreme lord, the demon king Rimuru, was issuing absolute commands to his subordinates. Don't die. It was a demand that, under the current circumstances, could be called an impossible challenge. It's our mission to do something about that, but... Testarossa thought, unenthusiastic. The important thing for that was to get a perfect grasp of the situation. Both Guy and Velzard are individuals whose abilities surpass Testarossa. If she were to get caught up in a battle between those two, there was a very real possibility that she could die without even understanding what was happening. From here on out, she couldn't do anything careless. Testarossa and Moss could be revived with time, but that was impossible for Souka. That's why Testarossa's mind drifted to the white battlefield. A world dyed in white. Velzard's ice and snow had swallowed everything up and painted it all in a single color. But it was convenient for Testarossa. After all, she is the primogenitor's white Bran, the ruthless, cold, and beautiful white queen to all her enemies. Testarossa's consciousness melted into white, and she instantly grasped all the information she could. Information gathering is Moss's specialty, but there's no way her master, Testarossa, could be inferior. Normally, she just puts Moss to work, but if she were to put her mind to it, her own abilities would be more than enough. Thanks to Valgrind Sama's power, the impact on the land has been mitigated, and the battlefield is being maintained. Although the surface of the earth is frozen due to Velzard Sama authority, this is still. If Guy and Velzard were to clash, the sheer force of their power would have an immeasurable impact on the earth. Yet, the fact that the Earth's axis hasn't shifted or been disrupted is solely because Valgrind is protecting it. Even for someone like Valgrind, it's difficult to intervene in the battle between the two. There is no one other than themselves who can bring this fight to an end. What's concerning here is Velzard's objective. Not only Carrera, but all of Milim's subordinates were turned into ice statues. If the intention was to kill them, there would be no reason to go through such a troublesome process. Even if it was to protect the planet, it wasn't what Feldway had planned. That was why it was hard to imagine Velzard being controlled by Feldway. Uncertain assumptions and preconceptions can lead to fatal mistakes. Let's take more time to assess the situation carefully. Testarossa was cautious. They're almost at the heart of the matter, but they stop thinking there. Unlike normal people, they don't act without conviction. That's what Testarossa is. In order to better ascertain the situation, Testarossa began to grasp the entire battlefield from a vantage point that overlooked everything. At the center of her attention was, without a doubt, the battle between Guy and Velzard. In a battlefield where ordinary people couldn't even approach, and even those of heroic caliber were unable to clearly perceive the combat, Testarossa observed the scene with the ease of someone out for a leisurely stroll. Velzard emitted a pale blue glow from her entire body, neutralizing Guy's attack. The protective curtain of beautiful thin ice, diamond dust that shielded her form, created patterns reminiscent of dragon scales with each impact it received. It was Velzard's pride and joy as an ironclad defense. Snow crystal shield. That defense, even Guy can't break through it, I wonder. No, it seems he hasn't gotten serious yet. A considerable amount of time has already passed since this battle began. Yet, the fact that they are still observing the situation, suggests that both Guy and Velzard are well versed in the ways of battle as transcendence. That said, the same applied to Testarossa, so it was not worth being surprised. If a decisive opportunity for victory cannot be found, the one who panics will lose. The only option is to persistently repeat the process, following the established theory that victory goes to the one who completely exhausts the opponent's energy. Judging by that kind of information, Guy was at a disadvantage. Velzard efficiently focused on defense while carefully watching for an opening in Guy's movements. In contrast, Guy appeared to be repeatedly launching futile attacks in an attempt to break through the snow crystal shield, snow crystal. It looks that way, but since it's Guy, he must have some kind of plan. For example, something like this. If they were just buying time, that would be the best move. Guy was already thinking ahead to the upcoming battle against Ivorage, so he surely didn't want to exhaust himself here by fighting Velzard. If Velzard was going to focus entirely on defense, it made sense for him to adopt a strategy of attacking moderately to minimize his own energy consumption. But there's no point in just doing that. I wonder where he's going to drop it, and what he thinks about it. With that thought in mind, Testarossa continued her observation. As she grew accustomed to the battle, what caught her eye next was Velzard's beauty. Though dyed in a rage like a raging sea, her golden eyes remained locked onto Guy, never letting him go. Those normally gentle eyes were now gone. Only Guy was reflected in those cold, freezing eyes. I can't read this person's mind after all. In that case, it would be more certain to ask her how she really feels directly. Testarossa's grasp of the situation was complete. The investigation of Carrera and the others' whereabouts, which had been turned into ice statues, had already been completed. Testarossa began to move that far to protect Souka as she prepared for the battle. Moss asked Testarossa that question. Are you going to support Guy-sama? Testarossa glanced coldly at Moss, who had spoken with concern. I'm sorry. Moss panicked, thinking it was a slip of the tongue, but Testarossa didn't blame him for it, unlike usual. The real battle hasn't started yet. This isn't the time for her to appear. You're right. Besides, if Guy's going to get serious, I'll just get in the way if I join the war. Testarossa is also one of the Transcendents, but Guy and Velzard possessed a power akin to that of gods, from a different dimension. There was no way Testarossa would even consider intervening in a battle between those two. Testarossa made her reason for being here clear. As the second point, she had to stop Velzard from rampaging. It was also important to prepare for when the intruders into the labyrinth were eliminated, and the situation in their home country settled down, so they could accept reinforcements immediately. As for these objectives, there are already some that are beyond reach. That's the most important rescue operation. The conclusion had been reached that, including those under Millam's command, there seemed to be no issue with having to protect everyone who had turned into ice statues in this land. It was suspicious from the beginning, but it has been confirmed on site that Velzard had no intent to kill. And it was also clear that intervening in Velzard's power would be difficult, so the conclusion had been reached. We have no choice but to save Carrera and the others later. That meant the primary objective was gone, but for Testarossa, the secondary objective was her main objective. As long as they can stop Velzard, the problems in this land will be resolved. That's why she tried to read Velzard's objective, but even with Testarossa, she couldn't be sure. That's why Testarossa had no choice but to use force. However, it wasn't the direct use of force Moss was worried about. Beautiful, pure white. This land is dyed with my color. Don't you think it's convenient? Ah. At this point, Moss understood exactly what Testarossa was thinking. And his face went pale, as if to say, this is going to be a big deal. Testarossa's unknown power is the white pure world, the nihilistic world. It could be said as the power to manifest the depths of hell into this world. It was the power to construct a world just for Testarossa, capable of wiping out any and all life. Naturally, that was not an all-powerful power, but an unwieldy power that required various conditions. In the realm where the pure white world and the nihilistic world are constructed, if the area is filled with positive energy such as the vitality of life, it will interact with the manifested negative energy known as void, resulting in a phenomenon where they cancel each other out and annihilate. Consequently, if the authority of this realm is expanded over a wide area, it would lead to the mass slaughter of all living beings within its reach. Fortunately, the total amount of void energy that could be summoned was proportional to Testarossa's abilities. As a result, the scope of the pure and clean world, nihilistic world, was naturally limited. However, that was only if the premise that Testarossa wouldn't let go of the void's control, and let it overflow indefinitely and go berserk was followed. Testarossa was feared precisely because she had the potential to destroy the world. That being said, it is difficult to effectively utilize the pure white world or nihilistic world in battles against strong opponents. As mentioned earlier, void automatically cancels out living beings, so unless a certain number of lives are called in advance, the effective range of the ability will be significantly reduced. If they wanted to target the strong, they had to make sure they didn't get involved. Since it was impossible to distinguish friend from foe, there were few situations where they could use it. Despite its unparalleled power, it had little use for it. Even Testarossa, who excelled at intellect, hadn't been able to use this power. However, now, Testarossa had acquired the ultimate skill. King of the Dead World, Belial. This allowed her to perfectly control this extremely dangerous authority. This synergistic effect was beyond imagination, giving Testarossa an absolute advantage that made anyone who opposed her feel pitiful. Moss, who was the White Faction's viceroy, was the only one who was well aware of the horrors of her power. Life can't be lived in hell. It's a true emptiness that can destroy even souls and turn them into energy. Only high-ranking spiritual life forms can withstand this hell. Testarossa's pure white world, the nihilistic world, can summon that abyss into the real world. Incidentally, Ultima's specialty dark magic, Void Vanishment Prison, or Nihilistic Vanish, was a magic mimicking the workings of this hellish abyss. Since this was unfolding to cover not only a wide area, but an entire region, it made sense how dangerous this was. Even if Testarossa failed to control it, the emptiness would overflow indefinitely, and the world would be swallowed up by the ever-expanding abyss and collapse. Moss knew that. With only Testarossa's will, death would come that would not allow her to resist. The speed at which the white space unfolded surpassed even the speed of light. They must escape right away, before Testarossa could unleash her power. If they got caught up in it, Moss would die instantly, too. It's not just about protecting Souka. They must be prepared to give their own life as well. Moreover, it was thought that even resurrection might be impossible. They never tried it, and they don't particularly want to, so the truth remains unknown. But as for Moss, it doesn't really matter either way. It's fine to remain unaware until the very end of what feels like an eternal existence. With that thought in mind, they tried to act quickly, but that was when they suddenly reconsidered that maybe Moss wasn't. Testarossa's pure white world was terrifying, but it wasn't invincible. Not only was it difficult to set the conditions, but even if she activated it, she wouldn't be able to defeat an overwhelmingly superior level. If they were on the same level as Testarossa, like Carrera and Ultima, victory and defeat would be decided without issue. However, when the opponent became a dragon species, it would be difficult to make that vast amount of energy disappear. Not to mention, there are Guy in this land. Guy, the strongest of the 7 primogenitors, was definitely stronger than Testarossa. If it were only Guy-sama, maybe we could defeat him. With Guy and Velzard around, there was no telling how far the effects of the pure white world and the nihilistic world would extend. Testarossa wasn't the type to take bets. She was intelligent and cautious, like she was assessing the tide of battle, and seeking the optimal solution appropriately. The reason why Testarossa is unleashing her authority here and now is... Are Guy-sama and Velzard-sama the only ones in this land? No. Is that really the case? At this point, Moss finally realized that the premise might have been wrong. Like Testarossa, Moss is gathering information. He cast off his own bundling to scrutinize the area. He shared that information with Testarossa too, so he didn't see anything out of the ordinary. That should have been the case, but there was a possibility he had overlooked it. Because of its nature, the pure white world and the nihilistic world wouldn't miss anyone hiding within the scope of their power. No matter what kind of cover-up effect it had, the voids would never miss it. What if Testarossa is after it? Does that mean there's someone else here? You kidding? Moss was shocked. However, if the supreme Testarossa that Moss feared and respected had found that possibility, that's the truth. The result is always in the palm of Testarossa's hand. I'll strengthen my guard. Do that. I hate incompetent subordinates, Testarossa told Moss. That was her way of being kind, proof that she recognized Moss. After all, if he really was incompetent, she wouldn't even be able to stand in front of Testarossa. Before they can even call out, their existence will likely be erased. As the Viceroy, Moss was well aware of that. And they continued to choose the correct answer with more than 90% accuracy, protecting their current position.